All right. So today we're here with Mr. Caesar Pagan. He is a fellow podcaster, spiritual podcaster in the industry. And he actually interviewed me, I want to say last December or November. I can't remember. It's just somewhere around that time. And he's a really nice guy and very knowledgeable. And today I'd like to interview him to get his story and like how he became spiritual and like how he, started podcasting like me and stuff like that. So yeah. So, Caesar, yeah. So, how did you get into spirituality, and how did this journey begin for you?
Awesome. Well, again, Ken, thanks for having me on your show, buddy. Yeah, and I think we did an episode, I think it was in December or November of last year and stuff. So you guys should definitely go catch that on my show. So my show is called Beyond the Frequency 369. And where that name came from is, everything is frequency. And I also understand the power of the numbers, the 3, the 6, and the 9. So I want to make sure that my episode talks about everything beyond this current frequency, and this is why I added beyond the frequency 369. So I how did I start on my journey? Well, my roots, I'm Panamanian and Puerto Rican, and a lot of my Panamanian culture as I grew up, a lot of it was about the supernatural, right? The supernatural, spirits and other worlds and things like that. So, witchcraft, all that good stuff. And so anyway, so I grew up hearing all these stories, and from a young age, I always knew that there was more than just the physical. I knew that we were, bigger, larger, more powerful. But as a young kid, you don't really know all those details. You just have this kind of like feeling. As I grew up, I got into comic books, and the comic book, the superheroes, X-Men, and things like that, always trying to find some kind of knowledge on what it is to be more than human. And again, at a young age, before I got into any esoteric teachings and tablets and cuneiforms and things like that, all I knew was comic books. So once I got older, joined the military, I was traveling. I started realizing that there's a lot of people out there with similar interests, and they all want the same thing. They all want peace. They all want love, harmony, but they also believe in dimensions, worlds, realities outside of this one. So I'm like, wow, people do have a story to tell. And again, moving on further after that, I started hearing that there are podcasts that talk about things like this. So I've always had in mind to do a podcast of my own, never really had the courage to do it until I met up with a longtime friend named Brad Leo from the Awaken podcast. And 20 years plus, met him in the military. Hadn't talked to him for a few years, probably over a decade. And then one day he just showed up on my TikTok feed, and he's not a social media guy. And I was like, is this Brad? And I was hearing him talk about a lot of spiritual and esoteric stuff. So I reached out to him on TikTok, and, next thing you know, we start having a conversation offline, probably 3 hours long, of just all of this stuff that he's learned in the last decade, all the things that I've learned. And he's like, dude, he goes, I know it's been 3 hours, but let me push record and let's do another two. And I was like, okay. And that became an episode. And after I did that interview with him, that was the spark, Ken. That was the spark. I was like, wow, that was therapeutic. It was therapeutic. It was great. It was what I needed. So next thing you know, it probably within 2 weeks, I started buying equipment, setting up, looking on YouTube, Googling things, and figuring out the process of what it is to podcast. I still don't know everything. I still don't have all the answers, but I got a pretty good idea up to today. And yeah, so now I am exploring the the realms, the dimensions, reality, all through conversation. So
Yeah, yeah, certainly. I could kind of relate to what you're saying. The beauty of being a podcaster is you get to connect with so many high level people. And, when when you're a nobody, you can't really teach stuff. You can't really create spiritual content. What is the best way you can, create spiritual content? You can ask questions, and that's kind of how that all began too and stuff. And I'm really, for the longest time, I hated the fact that I I have to interview other people to, create good content. I still, don't really like to do podcasting a whole lot and stuff, but it is a good way to create good content. And, if you don't create good content, you can't grow and you can't connect with people and stuff. So I kind of reluctantly do it. And I admit this, like, about how I feel about me podcasting and stuff like that. That's why I'm not, super, I don't have like a super fancy setup and all this kind of stuff. But yeah, definitely when you said therapeutic, I mean, yeah, I mean, when you connect with like the right person that's like so knowledgeable and like so cool, it can be therapeutic for sure. Yeah, yeah. To talk to me a little bit more about your what you said Panamanian background. Are you do you come from like a shamanistic background or
No, no. Just my mother is Panamanian, born in Panama, and my dad is Puerto Rican, born in Puerto Rico. And but as I grew up, all I knew was my grandparents on the Panamanian side. So I grew up with a lot of their stories. My grandfather, and I don't know how true this is to this day, but a lot of the stories that I grew up with was with that my grandfather on my Panamanian side was like a white warlock, and he had spell books, so white spells or something like that, and he would use them. I don't know the details of all the stories. I think there was one story that kind of stays in my mind. And again, this is from me being young, probably like under 7 years old at least. He was being chased down some alley for some particular reason. Who knows what my grandpa was getting into? And he was being chased by two or three guys. He went into the alley. He said one of these white prayers, and then when the guys came into the alley, they couldn't see him. Like he wasn't there. He was there, but they couldn't see him. Some would call that like, a prayer, but it's all spelling, right? Anytime that you like vocalize somatic frequencies and you change the reality in front of you, you're casting a spell. So I do know there's dark spells and there's white spells. So as from what I understand, that's what he had. And in his passing, I have a twin brother, and I we were the only boys in the family. So the idea was that when he passed away, the white spell book would come to us. It'd just be passed on to the males. And at 10 to 11 years old, something at that age, this knowing resonated through me that I need to have this book. Now, again, all I knew was basically like comic books, and maybe that's kind of what drove me to like wanting to make sure that I had this book. But something came like a trigger, a remembrance of something saying, "You need this book is yours. Go get it." So long story short, we ended up going to Panama to go, to his funeral and everything and go through his things. And apparently the book was stolen by apparently his brother, which I didn't know he even had a brother, by his brother before we got there. And then he himself, no one in the family has heard from him again. Like it's been, I don't know, over 40 years and no one has ever heard of him. So we don't, I'm sure he's probably dead by now, but just a lot of mysteries growing up. And then I started going to American school. I was a military brat. My dad was in the army. So I started getting more back into the physical mindset of things and got away from the esoteric, which at the time I didn't know the term was esoteric. Excuse me. But I got away from all that stuff. And but like I said, when I became an adult, that's when I really got back into it. The I grew up in a Christian background, so I went to church, I got baptized, first communion, all that good stuff, right? Bible school, great as a foundation. And I remember they say they didn't kick me out, but I was removed out of church sometime in my early adulthood, probably like in my 20s or something like that, where they were talking about Jesus leaving and going somewhere like in the Bible, he leaves at 12 years old and then he comes back at like 30 years old. So there's a gap there. So I asked the what I thought was the most obvious question. Hey, pastor, whatever, where did he go? you know, if he left at 12 years old, apparently he left with his mother and father, and the pastor refused to explain it. And I was baffled. I was like, why? I was like, it's either you know or you don't know. But he refused, and he was saying that I was disrupting the service. So I got removed. Um, and that was where I was like, okay, that's weird. So I can't quite now question things in the book and things like that. And then I started figuring out there were other books from other countries, other cultures, things like that. And then that led me into finding ancient tablets. And ancient tablets, those are a lot of those that are found have little like stick letters and whatnot. That's called cuneiform. And I learned to read a good amount of those symbols, but there's a lot of them that have been translated. So I started reading a lot of those translated texts, and the stories there, Ken. The stories are like, you thought Star Wars was cool or Star Trek was cool. It's got nothing on these stories. Like the Star Wars and Star Trek stories and the species and the wars, all that came from these stories. You know, George George Lucas, the creator of Star Wars, read the Terra Scrolls. And if you read the Terra Scrolls, like 99.9% of those stories, the individual species, how they talk, their mannerisms, the wars that were happening in that time frame are the same ones in Star Wars.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is
Yeah,
why like
it's
Yoda
sorry to
talks all
interrupt
weird.
you, but,
Yeah.
it's really funny. I was watching I can't I the name escapes me, but I was watching an Instagrammer, TikToker guy who was talking about how George Lucas, this is, material was inspired by the stuff you're mentioning, and,
Okay, great.
yeah, yeah, I thought it was fascinating. It's just like I was just watching that, so it's just funny how you're bringing that up now.
Well, then there's a reason for it. It's not a coincidence then.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, do you wanna finish your story real quick,
No,
and
no,
I
no.
can.
I was just talking. Go ahead, Ken.
Oh, so, man, now I'm curious. Here, let me look up his name real quick. Now I'm
Yeah, by all
so
means.
curious. I can find it really quick too. Oh, I'd like to interview him, or I'd like you to interview him in the future, maybe. Um,
Yeah, yeah. Give me his name.
yeah, like,
I'm
well,
curious
well,
too.
because and so basically, this guy is like a flat Earth slash Tartaria researcher type of guy. Are you familiar with that stuff at all? It's like
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
something.
I'm into Beyond the Frequency 369 covers a lot of topics. Anything that's not mainstream. How about that? So
Yeah, yes, certainly. Come on, where are you? But yeah, while I'm looking, yeah, so basically this guy is trying to like, go to like, the quote unquote beyond the ice wall and stuff like that. And
oh
he's trying to
shoot.
like, do like an expedition apparently. But he was basically saying that, essentially, like he was saying some crazy stuff like stuff like Lord of the Rings, like you know or like being Zing in Star Wars is basically like something similar, or if not like outright like you know like the real like Star Wars type of creatures are like existing beyond the ice wall and stuff like that. I can't, man, like I can't
Yeah.
find this guy. I know I followed him, but I can't
No,
find him
you'll
right now.
you'll you'll
It's
find
it's
them.
it's 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 all good. Like it's all good. I shouldn't be looking him up like in the middle of a podcast, but
You're
like
fine.
but it's just really interesting. Lately, this whole like what where are we, like what is our reality type of thing has been like really really been something on my mind a lot. Like what are your thoughts on flat Earth, Caesar?
Flat Earth. It's funny though because I just interviewed Dave Weiss. The
Did
flat
you? Oh, wow, I'm a big fan, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I just interviewed him. I haven't posted. I'm actually currently working on editing it so I can post it. It's my next episode coming up, so check it out because it's a trip. It's like, probably about 2 hours long, but it was so worth it. But what's my thoughts on flat Earth? So I'm not a flat Earth or a round Earth guy. That sounds weird. So it's like where do I fall into? Well, I don't really care what shape it is. I To be honest, even if I describe to you the shape that I believe this construct is in, it still probably will either melt some brains or just not. Or you know, um, I'll put it this way: you remember the all the ancient depictions of what the Earth looked like before NASA showed us it was a globe. Do you know what all the cultures?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Yeah, they have it all like a like a flat earth inside a dome, and then
Yeah.
they have, like, pillars on the bottom holding it up.
Yeah.
Well, that's all from ancient knowledge, that's all, like, when the ancient extraterrestrials, I don't know if we can say aliens on here or anything like that, but when the ancient aliens were here, and again, a number of races of them, and they were interacting with humankind, they were telling them, "Look, this is where you're at. This is what it looks like." They were giving them information. Just because they don't exist, let me go back because that's wrong term. Just because we don't interact with them as often as humanity did back in those days doesn't mean they're not around. And more importantly, doesn't mean that the information that they gave to those humans doesn't mean it's bullshit. Can I say bullshit here?
Of course.
Oh, okay, all right. So so we are pretty much on the borderline of being disrespectful to dismiss the information of our elders, you know? And we're taught it's so weird. We're always taught to respect and like key in on the teachings of their elders, but then it's selectively. It's only when it when it uh resonates with the narrative of whoever is telling us that.
Mhm.
But yeah, Bible was written way after um Jesus died. So when I found that out, I mean, we're talking about like anywhere between 300 to 800 years after he passed away. All right. So there's that. Then we find out that there's like all these ancient texts that were written like 450,000 years prior to that. So the question that I ask is, what came first, the chicken or the egg? you
Right.
know? So I'm gonna go. I mean, holy shit, I'm gonna go with the ancient text. And the
Mhm.
ancient text fills in a lot more gaps than the Bible. And we know that's all like rewritten and things like that. So that's where I'm at with my knowledge. But I know I went away from your question, which was the flat earth deal. I just do all the ancient depictions of what the earth looked like. That's what I believe the earth
Gotcha.
looks like.
I man, the more I dig into, conspiracy theories and spirituality and all this kind of stuff, it just raises more questions. But I'm coming to lately, I've been thinking about these two possibilities. And one is that, I mean, you're obviously a spiritual guy. You've heard the concept of we create our own reality, right?
Yeah.
And my thing is this, like, so if I'm creating my own reality, then like, I know this sounds insane, but like, am I creating the flat Earth? Am I creating the round Earth? Am I creating all these conspiracies from my perspective, from my own matrix's perspective? You know what I mean? That's something that I've
Yeah.
been wondering because, like, if the concept of you create your own reality is real, then this should apply to everything.
Yeah.
And so like that's something that I've been thinking about because, like, I have self-sabotaging behaviors a lot and stuff. I recently, left this new energy school that I joined and stuff. And like, it's just like, okay, here we go again. I left this school and teacher told me I'm not training proper and stuff. And it was my fault. But I'm thinking to myself, like, well, I wasn't training properly. And it's just like, why do I keep falling into this pattern like over and over and over again. Like there has to be some kind of subconscious like fear or subconscious like something that's allowing me to keep that's keeping me in this pattern, and I don't know, it's just like, and when I try to apply that to conspiracy theories, sometimes I wonder like, well, maybe, this whole reality is just, whatever you're thinking in your head. I don't know. I know that sounds
It
kind of,
doesn't. It doesn't. Ken, who when you say it sounds crazy or wild or whatever, who are you talking to? Right? I mean,
yeah,
we understand each other. Like your audience, they understand what you're saying. They're probably asking the
yeah,
same questions that you are. So if you're crazy, I'm crazy, everyone's crazy, right?
yeah, yeah,
Um, but I also don't believe that like what's norm, right? What's normality? Like when you say something's normal, compared to what, Ken? Right? Compared to what?
right.
Everything is different. Everything is unique. But I wanna address what you were talking about. You were talking about what is this reality or whenever you think about it, are you creating your own bubble, if you
Mhm,
if you will. That's a
mhm,
great place to be for you because what you're doing is you're allowing yourself to remember. Remember what you already know, but you forgot when you came here. What do I mean by that? So I have this on my website as well, but and my website is beyondthefrequency369.com. And the objective of my podcast is to help people remember who they were before the world convinced them otherwise. And why are we here? My understanding is we're here to experience what we're not. What does that mean? Um, we are spirit first before we are corporeal. Okay, before we have a meat suit. Okay, so we were an energy being. This energy being, you, I, your audience, we are omnipotent beings, unlimited power, uncontrollable. We create realities at the snap of a thought. In order, and also, we come from the base foundation of our existence is unconditional love. Okay, so in order to experience everything fully, especially ourselves, we have to take a break, a pause from being omnipotent, from being, this powerful being and come here. This is why I say again, we are here to experience what we're not. So by coming here, we forget that we are omnipotent. And now we have the ability and the opportunity to experience and learn how it is to die, to be hurt, to be manipulated, to feel these feelings, to be controlled, to make mistakes, all of these things, to feel powerless. We are actually all these things that sound really bad are actually part of the experience. It's intentional. So the omnipotent you has broken into a fractal of itself, which is now Ken. And Ken, you're here, your life up to this point and everything that you're going to do moving forward, you are playing that game. You locked in. You said, this is the experience that I want. When you go play a video game, Ken, you know what game you're going to play. You have an idea what that game's about. You create the character, all right, and then you upgrade and level up the character as you go through the experience to then get to the end point, whatever that may be. So what if in that same mindset, that's exactly what you were doing as a metaphor? You came here, you knew the experience, you know how this game is technically going to end, your true self. But the character Ken has no idea. Character Ken is just like, here's what it is. You know, your true self knows all the cheat codes too. Your true self knows that if you go to this city, to this building, to this class, you're going to level up or get a power up or whatever you want to call it, because you're going to learn these things. And somehow your true self guides you to those points if you listen. And this is the thing that's very hard for a lot of us is we're not trained as we grow up, we're not trained to listen to our true self. Now, I don't call it our higher self because your words are powerful. When you identify your true self as an entity that's outside of you, you now unintentionally and subconsciously create a separation between you and it. It's not you and it, you're both the same thing. So I use the term my true self or my expanded self. You know what I mean? I don't know if you got anything out of that, but I just want to just kind of summarize and say that the whole point is there's moments that we have these conversations, and hopefully in these conversations, it triggers a memory of of a feeling, not an actual physical memory, but this feeling of knowing like, man, that resonates with me. Like this feels right. And that's you remembering what you already know.
Yeah, that was beautiful and, like, well said. Lately, I've been in the, like, the chi industry, so to speak, you know what I mean? Like, the telekinesis, the aerokinesis, the energy well, I don't wanna use the word manipulation, but, just, the energy niche for so long, and, like, I don't know, like, I'm kinda at the point where I'm really, like, seeing myself from a third party perspective, and I'm seeing like all my flaws, and I'm thinking to myself, you know what, like maybe like energy really isn't like where I really want to go. I mean, I can sure do podcasts, because I'm a podcaster, I can still talk about it and stuff like that, but I'm saying for myself, like maybe energy isn't it, like and like you talking about spells and things like that earlier was like almost like synchronistic too, because like I'm thinking what I really need to explore is like, my mind, like because like I feel like, this is things like hypnosis or NLP and things like that, like stuff that I thought was like that didn't interest me before. I just like, was like so fascinated by energy, and like, that's all I cared about and stuff. But like now I'm thinking maybe that stuff isn't very important. In fact, like it's yeah, like not important at all. And I'm kind of at the point where I want to explore like the mind, because I feel like, it's the mind that's like, kind of disabling me from like, being successful and stuff. And so like, I don't know why I'm bringing this up, but like,
No, you're on
on,
the you're like you're speaking. What you're doing is when you go on a tangent, it's a good thing. Here's why. When you go on a tangent is because everybody, have you heard of channelers? People who channel
yeah,
like
yeah.
okay, everybody channels, okay?
Mhm,
Some better than others. What you were doing right now was you're thinking, "Oh, here's me just kind of just babbling," right? You're not. You're channeling a message from your true self, and you're speaking it out loud into existence, and you're saying like, "You know what?
mhm,
This is probably not where I need to go," or whatever it is that you feel from your heart. And Ken, I'm proud of you. That's actually very good. You should do that. You should just let we talked about earlier, the flow state.
mhm,
That's what you were doing. Whenever you get to that point where you say, "Man, I
mhm,
don't," when you come to realize, "Man, I don't know why I'm saying all that." At that point, now you just kind of came back to you, the
mhm,
physical you. But before
mhm,
that, that was your true self talking, just saying out loud what needs to be said, because in order to uh to contribute to in creating your reality, you got to
mhm,
use your somatic frequencies. You got to put it out there. You got to move the air. You
mhm,
got to change the atoms. You got to manipulate
mhm,
things. So
mhm,
you're on it, man. You're on it.
mhm. Yeah. Yeah, thank you for that. Enough about me. I want to ask more about you and your content. So we mentioned flat earths and stuff like that. You've also like looked into Tartaria stuff, right?
So what talk to me from what you understand what Tartaria is, because I may understand it differently or might refer to it as a different name. But what do you
Well,
understand? What is that?
essentially, Yeah, essentially what I'm referring to is the idea that there are history's completely a lie, basically.
Oh, yeah.
Or like,
Well,
or we absolutely don't know nothing about history because when we look at our these like, you know, very advanced architectures and stuff like that, like how do we build it type of thing. I'm not an architect, I don't know.
yeah.
But like a lot of people claim that it's impossible with our current technology, or maybe not with our current technology, but it's impossible with the old technology that we had, that it was impossible to make these like amazing architectures and stuff like that. Again, I'm not an architect, I don't know. But when I and this, some people say that these architectures have like sacred geometry type of stuff, energy, around them and things like that. That's kind of what I'm referring to. But I guess what I'm trying to ask you is like, do you think history? You mentioned the Bible and stuff like that, and like these ancient texts and stuff like that. I mean, my question that I've been having a lot lately is any history even real? Obviously stuff like from like World War II and probably from the 1900s, is probably real. I mean, that's pretty well documented. But anything before that, I wonder, like, do we even know anything? Like, how old is this place even? And I don't know. I just have so many questions. Like as I said, the more you look into this stuff, the more you have questions. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I appreciate you asking that, Ken. It's a great question. First, let's start off with the word history. That's his story. Okay. So history is written by those that win. Like when it comes to like a battle, the losers aren't writing that story, so you don't know what's going on
Right.
there. So when it comes to battles, history is written by the winners. And so is that really fair? Is that the full history? Probably not. All right. Um, and given the fact that this day and age, today, as we sit here, Ken, if you want to learn about any place outside of your city, we go to where? The internet. We go to the internet and we go to all the other social media apps that will tell us what's happening out there.
Mhm.
Um, you got to then question the source. Where is it all coming from? We know that and it's going to sound redundant when I say that, when folks say don't believe everything that's on the internet. It's a true statement. Okay.
Mhm.
Because we don't know not only the source, but then the people that are providing us that source, and then who do they get that information from, and then who
Right.
do they get that information from, and just keep going back. you know
Yeah.
it's like, for one of the greatest mysteries for the majority of humanity is what's really out there outside of our planet. Okay. Is space even real? And we everything that we know about space has been given to us, has been provided to us. So let me go back to one thing I mentioned earlier in the when we started this show, that the ancient aliens gave the knowledge of what space is and the planets and their positions and the colors to those people. So if they did that to them, um and what you call it, and then the government or whoever, the private organizations are feeding us information of what things are and everything, like, we can't say that the aliens or the ancients back then were given wrong information. There's a lot of information back then that catches up to today, that aligns with each other. How the hell did 200,000 years, and I'm being generous, 200,000 years, how they know how many planets that we had, the names of the planets, the colors, the density, which ones was just pure air, which ones were solid, which ones had life, constellations that are on the opposite side of the sun, um which again doesn't make sense, because regarding anything being on the opposite side of the sun, if supposedly they tell us that we are traveling and spinning at like 600 or 60,000 something miles an hour through space, it's not just the planets, it's the sun, it's everything, right? So is there really a behind of a sun topic, like, you know? So, but anyways, it's just that they gave people knowledge. We're getting knowledge from the government and things like that. What's the truth? Do we
Yeah.
how do we fact check any of that stuff without actually
Yeah.
seeing it for ourselves?
Yeah. Yeah. That's well said. Another thing I kind of want to bring up, and I don't know how you feel about this, and me saying this might be the most controversial thing I could possibly ever said, but
I love it. Go for
you
it.
know, a lot of times, and I know this from direct experience, a lot of times, and it was more abundantly clear to me as became more known in this industry and things like that. It's a small industry, like especially the telekinesis industry, very, very small industry. So like when you have 1,000 subscribers, you're like the man. And like it's like it's like the more I became known, the more like I obviously gained haters and things like that, which is natural. I mean, like when you know, people have this tendency to like, just hate on people that are popular. I think it's just a natural human tendency, and that's fine. Like it's just who we are. We like to gossip. We just, you know, it's just what we do, which is perfectly fine. Um, you know, no matter who it is, it seems like people are always like criticizing people that are like much more successful than they are. And what I mean by this is like for instance, like you mentioned a ton of, very high level, well known people on your podcast, you know, like they tend to always criticize like very well, or not them per se, but like their audience tends to like criticize people that are very well known. Like I'm just gonna name a few names. Like Teal Swan, for instance, a lot of haters she has, right? You know, but like I feel like if she had a very small audience, she won't be criticized as much. You know,
Yeah, I see.
because like circle is small and people respect her more and stuff like that. It's just there's this natural tendency for people to just want to blame things on people that are more successful than they are. Um, and I think the same concept kind of applies to like conspiracy theories as well. Um, like when people talk about like the Rockefeller families or like, these like, I don't even know what their net worth is. These like trillionaires, like,
Yeah.
these bankers, if you will, people tend to just put the blame on them. Like people say, like, these guys are the bad guys. They're running the world. They're destroying our lives and stuff like that. But I'm a firm believer that we create our own reality, like I said earlier. I'm also a firm believer that, you have to really just, take self accountability and stuff. It's easy for us to criticize, like, people. But sometimes I, look at some of these people that are always like, bashing these like, world leaders and stuff like that. And I think to myself, you know, you might have a legitimate argument. Maybe these people have done wrong, but like, haven't you also like, done wrong as well in your life? And also like, have you really truly done besides like ranting on social media? Have you done anything to actually try to contribute and do anything positive to the world other than aside from like spreading messages and stuff? I mean, obviously you can argue that that stuff is great, but like, and like, bringing awareness is great, but like, you see where I'm going with this?
Yeah, I do.
Like
I do. I do.
I just feel like, you know, people have a natural victim mentality and stuff. And I just don't, I'm one of those people that's just not convinced that like famous, no, well, like the world leaders aren't like, bad people. Am I making sense?
You're making perfect sense, and what it sounds like is that you're talking about people that are more exposed than others. Okay,
Yeah.
these people are out, in the front lines. Like they're like for you got a lot of followers and everything, and you got a lot more people than that watch you than the next guy. So a lot of these celebrities, these political figures, things like that, they're all in the limelight. This is why we know that those people that are in the limelight are not the ones controlling things. All right. It's too obvious. The people that are actually controlling things are not so exposed, are not in the limelight. They are in the shadows. They're in the background. They are second in command. Okay. Not first and not the lowest guy, but right there in the sweet spot. Okay. So those are the guys that we need to be careful about, because those are the ones really making the moves. If you see a for the majority of the folks that you see are out in the limelight, they are just the face. They are the puppet. They are the, like, if this was one of those screens where here's the puppet, but the person that's moving the puppet is underneath, right? That's the one controlling that person. And that's how it really is. This is why we go to all these aliens, like the reptilians, who are known for manipulating lots of humans, but from
Mhm.
the shadows, because they don't have
Mhm.
to. Telekinesis, telepathy, all that good stuff. So yeah.
Right, right, and that's a good point, but the point that I was trying to, I guess, make, and maybe I didn't do a good job, explaining this. The point I was trying to make is, you know, this idea of good and bad. Like, is there really? I mean, obviously, there is good and bad, obviously, in this world, but like, are the bad guys that we think are bad? Well, I guess what I was ultimately trying to say was like, are the bad guys that we think are bad necessarily really bad? Like, I think if you look at it from a different perspective, I mean, that's the question. I mean, I don't obviously know the answer for sure, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I wonder, like, if when people say these guys are the bad guys, the bankers and stuff like that, I wonder if they're really truly bad, or if they're just like everybody else, like, they're just very successful and just operating another business, and they're just like, "Dude, God, we got so many haters because we're so successful." Like, you see what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah, I do.
that's what I wonder sometimes, and, like, you know, I I question these things a lot, like, even the idea of, like, demons or, like, Satan, I don't know, like, I really don't. I don't
What
know, like,
the those negative entities and the bad people, like, let me ask you this though, like, what how do you, as Ken, how do you
Mhm.
determine what a bad person is?
Th
What
that's a good question. I mean, obviously, there's people that hurt me and stuff, but, like, I try to emphasize what's the word? Empathize
Yeah,
them, and I, wonder, like, what caused them to behave this way? Maybe I did something wrong as well, or maybe they were having a really bad day, or maybe they were traumatized as a child and things like that.
yeah, yeah,
So, like, I don't know, like, this whole idea of, like, good and bad is it's hard to say, because I mean, I know for a fact that I've done tons of bad, and I have negative thoughts about people all the time. Like, sometimes I feel like, man, this guy's so horrible and stuff, but I have to remind myself, like, man, but I'm not perfect either, and I'm
yeah.
not. I really am not. So,
I think it's, first of all, it's okay to have thoughts like that, because it's
mhm,
just part of your experience being processed in your
mhm,
physical mind. Okay. But it's a matter of perspective, because
yeah,
the person that is tagged as bad, they have a different perspective, right? They're looking at the
yeah,
other person tagging them as the bad ones. So it's
mhm,
like, it's just matter where you're standing, on what side of the fence. There's that.
mhm, mhm,
Then I also don't think that I don't I don't want to say I don't believe. I want to say that my understanding is that there are no negative entities. Here's what I mean. I don't mean that they don't exist. I just don't think that they are the bad in general, just the category of bad. It's
mhm,
something, because when you see something dark, it's automatically labeled as bad and negative. No,
mhm,
it's dark, but it doesn't mean that the intention behind it is bad. Here's why. What is what is darkness, right? Darkness is the absence of light.
mhm,
Okay. So if let's look at a negative entity. A negative entity, everything comes from something. And from my understanding, everything comes from unconditional love. Okay. Everything
mhm,
comes from a light source. Now,
mhm,
at some point, that negative energy has fell so far away from that light that becomes darker and darker and darker. So, like, for whatever reason, okay, for whatever reason, it's fell back. Now, I've talked to folks who I talk to folks who've gone out of body. I do it myself
Mhm.
as well. And in the conversation, we talked about that some of these associates of mine, when they leave their body, they are bright, like bright light beams. The negative entities are attracted to that light, so they're going to come to you. So if you go into the what I call home, the other place outside of here, when you go into this plane of existence and you are not prepared or trained to accept what else exists here outside of our mortal frequencies, you're going to get scared. And what are you going to do? You're going to shun it away. You're going to push it away, but what if the mindset is this? What if that negative entity knows that it's so far away from light that it's coming to you for help? It's asking you to help it come back into the light. It's this is why it's always attracted to good people. Okay.
Mm.
Because all it's doing is asking for help, but it doesn't really know how to. And the way that we're trained, the movies, right? The stories, we're mainstream train us and programs us to believe that if it's dark, it's bad.
Mhm.
Right. So if we
Yeah.
change our mindset and think about the negative energies differently, fear will just go away.
Mhm.
So does that make sense to you?
Yeah, yeah, it does, and I like that you said that, I also wanna bring up another point, from a lion's perspective, or I should say, I don't know, like a zebra's perspective, right? If a zebra gets attacked by a lion, a zebra will probably a wild zebra probably considers a lion to be evil, if I have to guess, or a hyena to be evil, if I have to guess. But from a lion's perspective, I mean, like, they're just food. They have to hunt that. So like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just like everything is kind of perspective, like, and I mean, you can get into the argument of, I mean, maybe like, because we have to consume something, right? I heard of, theories about like breatharians and stuff like that,
Mm,
or Bigu people don't have to consume anything, but like maybe, sometimes I wonder maybe from like a plant's perspective, we're evil too because we're killing it and we're destroying it. You know what I mean? Like, so
hmm.
it's just, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, you know,
It's a
like
good
from a,
it's a good way of thinking about it. Let me ask you this, Ken.
yeah.
You said that if you could guess what how the zebra felt, you
Mhm,
would guess that it thinks that the lion is evil. Now, yes, you're right. It is a guess, right? Because without asking the zebra, we don't really know.
mhm,
But then you also acknowledge that the lion respects and I just say respect loosely because again, I too don't know what the lion thinks, but there is some kind of understanding that the lion knows that the zebra is part of its food chain.
mhm,
Okay. So if we can say that about the lion, can we not say that the zebra also understands that it's part of the food chain? That there's things out there that are going to eat it. And its existence, it just tries to survive one day at a time, you know?
mhm,
So so to your point, would the zebra in my understanding, would the zebra assume that the lion is evil? Probably not. Because then now we're implying that the animals understand what bad and good is, you know?
mhm,
And as far as we know, animals just do. They do what's in their instinct, you
mhm,
know? But it's interesting. I'm not saying that you're wrong at this at all, and I'm not saying that I'm right either. It's two
mhm,
different perspectives by the
mhm.
same topic, and I appreciate you bringing that up.
Yeah, yeah, it's just this whole idea of good and bad has been, like, something that I've been, thinking about a lot lately, and I just wanted to bring it up to you, just to
Yeah,
hear your perspective, so it's just really cool that I got to kinda hear your take on it. I mean, we can talk about this kinda, philosophical topics, like, endlessly and try to break it down and try to
absolutely.
figure out the truth, but,
Yeah,
I mean, I think, like, it's frustrating, in a way because, like, we kinda come back to always go back to, but who knows,
because we
because we
don't
don't know.
know, but I think that by having these conversations, that's huge, Ken.
Mhm.
By just having this conversation, see, like I said, I'm gonna sound like a broken record. The reason that we have these conversations, the reason that you have your podcast and I have mine, so we
Mhm.
can hopefully trigger something in this conversation that your
Mhm.
listeners are going to catch is going to
Mhm.
trigger a remembrance.
Mhm.
Period. And if it does that, then we did our job.
Mhm.
Because we are talking about things that exists in some type
Mhm.
of plane of existence, some type of
Mhm.
reality. And don't forget, we are multi-dimensional beings. So we exist in all plane of existence at the same time. So
Mhm.
I want to touch base something that you said earlier about, you mentioned that you kind of like, I don't know why I self-sabotage myself, you know?
Mhm.
And that's a good question. You have to ask that question to yourself and have that conversation with yourself to then find the answer. But make sure that you understand that the only answer that you should be receiving is not outside of you, it's inside of you. You know,
Mhm.
there's a whole universe out there, and there's a whole you inverse inside of you. So when you start getting to explore the you inverse, you don't need a space shuttle to go inside of yourself and learn that there's a whole universe or you inverse inside of
Mhm.
you that has yet to really be everything that you've learned thus far with the energy work. That is the tip of the iceberg. And the
Mhm.
beautiful thing about it is that you don't need to ask anybody's permission. There's no restrictions on where you can go. You can go anywhere. So learn and continue to explore yourself on the inside, and I guarantee you, you will find the answer to why is it. Even if it's something simple, if you're meditating and you're just asking yourself a simple question like, why do I keep self-sabotaging myself? And go deeper and deeper and deeper into your meditation until you find that little spark that says, hey, thanks for finding me, Ken. Here's what's going on. Get to know yourself better.
Yeah, yeah, certainly. Caesar, I want to talk a little bit more about your podcast and where it's going and stuff like that. Obviously, you're bringing on some amazing gifts lately. You mentioned guys like David Wise and stuff. Um, what is your vision with your podcast? I mean, like, obviously it's new and it's still very relatively small, but like the guest that you're bringing on is truly like, you know, amazing. What is your vision with your podcast and like where do you think it's going from now, from this point?
Um, I appreciate you asking that, Ken. I had originally thought that my podcast was to talk about supernatural stuff. All right. Cause this is what everybody was doing, supernatural stuff and conspiracies.
Mhm.
Then I started realizing once you open the door, the things that come in, you have to like observe what's coming in through your door. And what was coming in through my door was a lot of people with superhuman abilities, but not the superhuman ability, not the excuse me, not the superhuman abilities that I was accustomed to recognizing like superheroes. We're talking about the natural abilities of the human, you know, the power of the conscious mind, you know, those abilities. And I was like, wow, I started getting intrigued that like we have this power. I mean, forget the the way off left field like Cyclops or Wolverine. I mean, those are cool and everything, but we are cool too. You know, we have abilities that are so routine to us, so already inherited in us, that the beauty of the thought of unlocking just one of those abilities could change the world. One person
Mhm.
unlocking one ability,
Mhm.
changing the entire world. So imagine the 8.2 billion people on the planet unlocking each one ability. That's huge. Now imagine those
Yeah.
same 8.2 billion people unlocking infinite abilities.
Yeah.
That's like that'll melt your brain.
Yeah.
So there is, I do believe that so this podcast where it's going is going back to what I mentioned about my website is through these conversations, we help you remember who you truly are by having
Mhm.
these different guests talk about different things. And then you're like, when you resonate with something, Ken, I don't believe that the resonate is uh I like the topic. I think the resonant means that it's a feeling. Like it feels like I know it, you know? So whenever you feel something that resonates with you, it's because you're for that moment you're tapping into your true self, and your true self is tapping on your shoulder like, Ken, that's it. Yeah, that's it. Remember that. That's us. That's me and you. And I tell folks, they say folks have asked me, how do I know when my true self is pointing me the right direction? And to my understanding today is two feelings: passion and excitement. When how many times have you came across a new modality or new teaching and you got really excited about it, you know?
Yeah.
Or you got really passionate about it. But it's that feeling, right? That feeling, our true self talks to us, not verbally, it talks to us through feeling. So when you get really excited and you want something and you want to do something, do it. Do it. That's how
Mm,
you know that you're on the right path if you're ever lost.
yeah. Yeah, that's beautiful. Not to talk about myself again, but like I mentioned that I left my new teacher that I found recently and stuff, and
Wait,
now I'm
Ken,
kind
is
of
that the one? I'm sorry, but is that from the last time that you were on
yeah,
my
yeah,
show?
yeah,
That
the
one?
yin
Oh
school.
man. Okay. I'm
Yeah, and
sorry.
primarily what happened essentially was, and I made a video about it, but primarily because I was boxing and stuff. They're a very yin-based school, meaning that you can't do like intense physical exercise and stuff like that, because otherwise it'll really interfere with their type of
Gotcha.
exercise and stuff.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of restrictions. And so essentially I can't like be doing you know that particular training because it's very harmful if I did that. So, and it's not like a full out or anything. I still respect my teacher. My teacher said, "Hey, if you ever do quit martial arts, you can always come back." And like I want to reiterate, like I'm still friends with a lot of people in the school, and like I deeply respect my teacher. But it's just there's a big part of me that wants to be tough because I wasn't a tough guy, when I was a kid and stuff. So even at 35 years of age, I'm boxing and I'm doing jujitsu and all this kind of stuff, and that's maybe perhaps something that I need to. I don't know. It's like I still love fighting and I still love UFC and stuff, and it's just hard for me to let go of that. And so, but now I'm thinking to myself, like maybe, you know, maybe there's like a system, maybe there's a teacher that I'm unaware of that can like allow me to do both. And that's kind of what I'm hoping for. Maybe
Well,
that's like the
Ken,
next stage of like, uh expansion of my possibility that I'm seeking. I don't know, but I'm open to it. But like if I can find something like that, that'd be really cool. But as
Ken,
of right now, I haven't
let me
found
answer this,
anything.
Ken. Let me
Yeah,
answer
go
this,
ahead.
Ken, because uh, now again, there is no judgment. You and I are just conversating here.
Mhm.
The You mentioned that you keep looking for a teacher. And this is one thing that I talk about is when you keep looking outside of you,
Mhm.
you're not always gonna find the best answers that you need for yourself.
Mhm.
And so when you then say, well, I try this out and then I self-sabotage myself, you're not self-sabotaging yourself. Your true self is finally getting you out of that situation because it's telling you, Ken, like, nice try, but listen to me, you know? Like I
Mm.
put you in this game. Imagine, like I said, with the whole game scenario. Imagine if your game character went rogue and
Mhm.
started going like here and everything. You get frustrated. You're like, no, like stay back on the path and everything. You are I tell excuse me, I remind folks that we have two minds. We have our physical mind and we have our conscious mind. Okay. You might be more than, let's say, 80%, 80 over 20, more in your physical mind, and then 20% every now and then you touch base with your conscious mind. So if you start trying to be more in your conscious mind and start thinking about a lot of these questions, and these paths that you're trying to go, you'll have a lot more of a flow to do those things. But right now, from what you're saying, is that you're in your physical mind and you're thinking too much about, well, if I go here, I'm going to get this. When it comes to the physical reality, we expect there to be a process, and you use that word a lot. Process, boom, 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 one after
Mhm,
the other. That's the logical side. That's your left
mhm,
brain.
mhm,
Okay, you need to get on your right brain. Okay,
mhm,
it needs to. The answer or the feeling needs to just happen. It needs to just come through you, and then you'll
mhm,
know, and it'll feel just right, and you will have to not question it at all, at
mhm,
all. So that would be, if I may, that would be my advice to you. However way that you can figure that out and everything is, take a moment, stop looking for teachers. Okay. And again, I'm not your dad. I'm not telling you to do. I'm just saying, but for a moment, stop looking for teachers and then see if you can teach yourself to remember what
mm.
you already know. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point, and it's funny you say that because, like, for the longest time, I did that, and like, I felt like I got some answers from intuition or the universe, whatever you want to call it, and a lot of times they were pretty dead on, but I still was like, but like you said, like whatever side of the brain just tells me like, "But what if you're wrong? What if you're wrong about this?" And so, yeah, you're right. It's like that's kind of why I really want to have like more astral projection experiences or like more, like I want to actually hear, actual like, voices and stuff like that in my head because like I feel like it can allow me to like know for sure that like I'm actually not like, you know,
Well,
just
you
thinking.
you
I'm not
make
actually
sure,
guessing,
yeah,
but I have the right answer, so
yeah,
that's kind of the ability that I would like to maybe hone perhaps, yeah.
yeah. I wouldn't have I wouldn't have an expectation on how it should happen. 'Cause there's you going back to your logical to the process.
Mhm,
When you mentioned that want to start hearing actual voices, you are assuming that that's how it works,
mhm,
right? You're expecting because you heard folks when folks say that they hear things. Um, I don't know if you've ever asked folks that make those comments, is like, what exactly, how does that actually sound? It's when we in the physical world are the only ones that communicate the way you and I are doing right now through
mhm,
verbal cymatics. Okay. Anything outside, matter of fact, even the animals on this planet don't communicate verbally like that. A lot of them is telepathy, right? So we're the weird ones. But anything outside of this physical body, we don't communicate verbally. We communicate through feeling, through knowing. So, for example, if I sent you a telepathic thought of the word, I'm going to say out loud so the listeners can understand. But if I say the word Christmas, what do you think of, Ken, when I say Christmas?
I
What?
think
Yeah.
of like Christmas trees, I think of like snow, I think of like family getting together, like
Do
turkey.
you remember feeling how it all feels?
Yeah, yeah.
You could probably smell certain things if you want to. Right. That's my point. So telepathically, if I sent you the word Christmas, you would have an instant knowing of everything that has to do with Christmas. Okay. This is how outside of your body, um we communicate. We communicate just by sending images. This is why aliens, when they talk to people, they don't need to know your language because they're talking to you telepathically. Okay.
Mhm,
No one has ever told you, even well, okay, in the fictional stories, but no one has ever told you that they've been abducted and the alien just literally just vocalize. in Russian or in Chinese, or no one ever says that. They telepathically just sent me this feeling that I knew what they were talking about. So yeah, yeah.
Interesting. Caesar, what are your by the way, how long how many how long can you go? I do want to ask one more question.
I'm good. I'm good. We can go as long as you want. Whatever.
Oh, okay. Okay,
I don't
cool.
have well, the conversation goes where it needs to go. And this is for you, this is for me, and this is for anybody who's listening. So I don't put a
Okay.
time on it, just wherever it needs to go.
Okay. Caesar, so what are your thoughts on God? So I kind of want to briefly tell you what happened. It kind of goes back to my me leaving this particular school that I was a part of and stuff. So when my teacher told me that I can't be doing you have to choose, like you have to basically, be a part of our school, or you can't be, you have to basically leave boxing and all this kind of stuff behind. And I was just kind of like, oh man, that's a tough choice. But obviously ultimately chose to walk away from the school, and I was really depressed. And I spoke to a particular student of the school, and basically, I was really depressed, and I was talking to her saying like, man, like, just I don't know where to go from here. Like, I really can't, I really thought this empath was my thing. And like, I wanted to really like, pursue this and stuff, but I didn't realize just how strict they were and stuff, yada, yada, yada. And then, um, the conversation went to like, God and angels and stuff. And like basically this lady is incredible. Like, she's very advanced, and like she can do some phenomenal things. In fact, I could say her name. It's Dahlia. Dahlia, who's Rob's left hand, yeah, woman. She's phenomenal. I had a conversation with Dahlia, and basically she started telling me about angels and God and things like that. And like, the last time I spoke to her, we kind of left with like, can maybe, you should just start, you know, um, building a relationship with angels, start doing more prayers and stuff. Maybe that's like what's good for you. Interesting enough, like, then I synchronistically like spoke to a woman from Australia who I've interviewed in the past. I'm not going to mention her name because she's been so, away from the scene for so long. So I'm not going to mention her name, but she basically told me about her angelic experiences where she prayed to a certain angel. I want to say it's Angel Michael. I don't know for sure, but she shared a story with me when she prayed to an angel that like feathers started falling from her room out of nowhere and stuff. And when I heard that story, I was like, man, that's synchronistic. And yeah, and she was telling me that like, she synchronistically like was watching a podcast about like, Angel Michael, and she was like, "Hey Ken, maybe this is like a podcast for you." I watched that podcast, and I was not like, it was a Jeff Maurer podcast, and it just wasn't resonating with me at all. And so I was just thinking like, maybe this is just telling me like, it's like maybe this is a sign that this angel thing is doesn't mean anything to me. But now I'm thinking to myself, well, but maybe there was a sign. Like maybe there was a sign that like, I need to basically, I don't know, like pray to God or pray to angels more to seek their wisdom and stuff. What are your? I'm sharing. I know it's a long story, but I'm sharing this story to say, Caesar, what is your understanding of God and stuff, and what are your understanding of angels? My understanding of angels is that they're basically just advanced beings that just transcended. What is your understanding of what God is, and what is your understanding of what angels are?
Well, first, I want to say that what's meant for Ken is for Ken. Okay. So even though Dahlia in this case introduced to you a podcast on angels and it didn't resonate with you, probably wasn't for you, you know? So you'll know. You've had moments where something resonates with you, that's for you. Period. Okay. So don't question that. So that's cool. My thoughts about God. So I'm not a religious person. I don't follow organized religion. I think it's BS. Okay. But I am a spiritual person. Now, to make sure that I'm clear on this, is it's great that people have a faith to believe in, a religion, if you will, because it gives people a direction. Okay, it gives also people a moral compass. You know what's right and what's wrong, right? Based off of their understanding of morality. So it's great that people follow religions, but not me. Okay, now, religion, from ancient texts, I can tell you that it was created. It was created to manipulate. Okay. So the fact that, and I'm just telling you that in short, so people can look into it if you care to look into it, if it resonates with you. But ancient text tells you exactly how, why, and when it was created. Okay. Um, so we got that clear on my side. And religion is kind of like the middleman between me and spirituality, or source, or God, right? So let's remove that out of the way and let's just go ahead and talk to you know the higher version of us. So what is source? I think source is love. I think
Mm,
source is love, and more, to be more specific, it's unconditional love. I think that when we come here to have this human experience, we are given bits and pieces and we're taught on what love is. But I mean, how many stories have you heard of people like having like near death experiences and tell you that they've experienced unconditional love and it's something that they just have been trying to find for years here on earth, because we don't really know it. We tap into it? Absolutely. But we don't really know what it is because we're focused too much on our physical mind and our understanding of what we're told that love is. So yeah, so God is love, or unconditional love, I should say. And angels, I do believe that angels do exist. I just believe that they exist in a different realm within our what I call our construct. So there's my answer to that.
interesting. You know, I have a question for you, and maybe this is why I was meant to talk to you today. It almost feels like this is more than an interview. This is like a almost like a consultation session. I always knew you were like a great guy and stuff, and I wanted to speak to you and stuff, but I didn't expect this to almost be like a counseling Ken type of thing. But but I am kind of going through a
Let's
lot
call it
like
that.
lately. Yeah, yeah, that's fine. But um, you know, you mentioned unconditional love. There's teachers out there that practice like I've interviewed Dr. Gallenberger from the Monroe, and so he's a telekinesis guy as well.
Oh, wow.
And he manifests money and things like that. And he like basically his whole course is on like just you know was pretty much, if you can like simplify it, was like basically just you know be heart centered and just be in like like you said, unconditional love. He doesn't call it that. I forgot how he phrased it. But he does emphasize the love a lot. And sometimes I wonder, like, maybe like, me, like you said, I'm trying to find all these like techniques on like, scanning nerve fibers and like, lowering my brainwave, lowering my heart rate, lowering my blood pressure and like, you know, meditations and like sun gazing and lucid dreaming and grounding and all this kind of stuff you got to do. Like maybe I don't need any of that stuff. Maybe what I need is to really truly tap into unconditional love, and I can really truly, you know, um, create the reality that I want. Maybe that's what I really truly need to focus on. Maybe that's what the answer that I've been seeking. Can
I
you
love
kind
it.
of relate to that, or
Yeah,
what
yeah,
do you think?
yeah. I First of all, I'm sitting here in gratitude, Ken, because um I'm proud of you, man. I'm proud of you, and
Really?
I am. I'm very proud of you with what you just said. You just came to you're tapping into the gateway to the next evolution of you, by just having the thought and the conversation. I mean, forget that I'm here. You're see, the way that I look at us is that I'm you and you're me. One of the things that I say at the end of my podcast is, I love you, I hear you, I see you, I am you. Okay. We are the same. So I don't see you as the physical, meat suit that you're wearing right now. What I see is your true you. All right. And I see your true you trying to remember. You're in there struggling, trying to remember, like, man, like, I know I came here to do something, and I know the intent of this experience was to forget why I came here in the first place, but I'm trying to remember. And you're doing all of these different things. So you're not wrong. Everything that you've done up to this point has been part of the process, and it has been intentional. So there's no regret behind any of that. You're on the right path to then get to this episode, to this conversation, to this last comment that you just made, that maybe I don't need all of that. Maybe I just need to go back into my heart. So it took, how old are you, can I ask?
35.
You're 35 and X amount of months and days, seconds, minutes, whatever, to get to this point, to make that realization. That's a beautiful thing. That's a beautiful thing. And I told you earlier in this episode that this conversation is either for you, for me, or for anybody else who's listening. Okay. So this is everything that's happening right now is meant to be how it's supposed to be. And when you said that last comment before I started talking, when you asked me how does that resonate with you, I was resonating with you as you were completing that sentence. This is
Mm.
also why I clap. All right. I clap because I'm proud of you, man. I feel that. My true self just felt that when you ring a bell, it resonates, or a crystal, when you hit it, it resonates. When you hit that comment, that sentence, it rang, and I felt it here in Florida. And I'm like, you got it. You got it. Where that goes from here is up to you, but it's a beautiful thing to recognize. So that's how I feel about that. And yes, that resonates with me, to answer your question.
Mm. Interesting. Yeah. Man, a lot you made me think about a lot of things, and you know, um but yeah, unconditional love. Yeah, it's so difficult to embody that, I think, because we live in a world where, we turn on the news, well, nowadays, most people don't watch TV, but we get feeds right nowadays on social media, and like we see just negativity after negativity, so it's and we go to work and stuff. I don't know what you do for a living, but like we go to work and we see, drama, negativity and stuff. And it's just hard to be in unconditional love sometimes. But I do remind myself, like that is the most important thing from time to time. But really, like maybe it's not something that I should say, hey, it's not something that I need to remind myself. Maybe it's just something that I need to really truly embody and really truly just become, maybe that's what I need to do. And maybe that's the most important thing above anything else, perhaps. So,
Once you do that, Ken, you're going to unlock all those things that you're trying to unlock. Snap, 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 snap.
mhm.
Okay. And then you're going to then reflect, and you're going to be like, damn, that's all I needed to do. All I needed to do was just open up that heart center. Like, for those that like to visualize it, and you use the term process, um is when you are, I'm gonna say the word loosely, meditating, okay? But when you're present, how about that? When you're present and you're quieting, things down. I like to use a headset that's like the construction grade noise cancellation. I'm talking about, like, I hear nothing, okay? And then I use a mask to black out my eyes. I mean, I want to be like just here. And for those of you that are listening, if you have a pool, even better. I have a pool. I go deep down with the snorkel, and I use that to just tune out everything, because frequencies are not going to get too far to me when I'm underwater. But anyways, I digress. What I'm saying is that once you get to that present state of mind, then like literally visualize yourself, tiny Ken, in your head from head to toe. Look at your fingers, look at your toes, look at what you're wearing. Visualize a character of you in your head, and then now visualize that character going somewhere. And that journey was going to take you wherever it needs to go. But what I'm saying is that journey should find its way into the center of your heart. Look for a tiny pinhole of a light in the darkness. And then when you get there, put your finger in it and open it. Open it. Because when we were created, that spark, that consciousness that animates us, within that, the gem, the jewel of God, of source, was hidden so far deep inside of us in the heart center that it said that when you're ready, you'll find it. You'll always find the center. But then we get here and we get hijacked by those that know that we're more than just this, and they feed us all of this dense energy. Then we put on layers of clothes. You know, we are the image that you are, the image that I am, are a compilation of everything that we've seen up to this point in our life. You saw this jacket on TV. You heard this song. You talk a certain way. You shave your head. You walk a certain way. The shoes that you wear, the necklace, everything that we have is a compilation of something else, but it's not really us. It's not us. We are a reflection of our society, of our experiences. So when you understand that, now you're like, okay, I got it. Now I'm going to go find myself. And when you find yourself, Ken, it's a whole new world.
Yeah, yeah, that's very well said. I'd like to wrap this interview up. With my audience is going to be mad at me if I don't talk enough about energy work and like supernova abilities because that's what my primary focus on my channel is. So, I would like to end with a question. Uh, what is you obviously mentioned, that you mentioned earlier about unlocking supernova abilities and stuff like that. Like, is there a particular ability that you would like to unlock? And you mentioned like superheroes. You mentioned that you were reading comic books and things like that. Do you have like a particular favorite superhero that you liked as a child or something?
Sure. If we play along the lines of a fictional superhero, oh man, I mean, Batman doesn't have a superpower, but that is my go-to guy. Everybody that knows me
Me
outside the
too. I love
podcast,
him, man.
I'm a Batman guy. But I say my other two would probably be um um like healing, like super healing, you know? And I think my gist of things is always when it comes to power, it's about immortality. All right. And I think I resonate more with immortality because of my current mindset that but I know that I am immortal. Like technically, spiritually wise, I'm immortal. So are you. So is everybody listening, to us, right? So this is why I resonate with that ability a lot more. Uh, is that ability to unlock? Not really. I guess to kind of really answer your question, I guess teleportation would be pretty cool. You know,
Teleportation.
yeah, just straight up,
Yeah.
just shift myself from one place and appear in the other. So I think that'd be a cool one. But the thing, Ken, is when I outer body, I do those things. So it's not as intriguing today as it was when I was younger, when I thought it was just fiction. Once you know that in your natural state you can do these things, it's just a natural state. Like I don't get excited when I move my finger. You know what I mean? Like because it's just what I do. If you can get in your audience, if you guys can get in the state of mind that you're natural abilities, these abilities that Ken and your folks are trying to unlock. If you get into a state of mind that you can already do this as simple as moving a finger, when you have that feeling, when you convince, when you remember that that's what you do, then guess what? It has no other option but to surface itself. That's it. There's I'll leave you with this. There's a powerful um equation, if you will. People say people use the phrase information is power. Have you heard that before, right?
Mhm, mhm.
That's great. But there's a piece to that that they don't really talk about. Information is power, but you have to also put in application to that information. And in our conversation, I will switch that with intention. So if you know something and you combine the intention to that knowing, it manifests itself. It becomes a reality. Okay. One of the main gifts that we were given coming here to this first realm was the power of imagination. Why? Because that's what we do up there or wherever outside of here. That's what we do. That's how we create things because you just think it, you imagine it into existence. So we bring that to here. And then when you come here, that is probably almost the number one thing that is being buried because as you go into the education system as a kindergartner all the way up, you're being taught processes. This is how you logically solve a problem, things like that. You don't tell when a baby is young, it's putting stuff in its mouth. It doesn't know about, the process of how it's actually done. It's just exploring with its imagination, you know? So until we ruin the baby and then we put him into school and then they, learn that imagination, it's not for you, that's for somebody else that with talent. We're all talented, you know what I mean? So anyways, I hope I answered your question on that.
Yeah, yeah, you certainly did. That was a wonderful answer. Oh man, yeah, yeah, you made me think about a lot of stuff and but I do feel good and that's ultimately what matters. Like right now I'm truly grateful that I got to seek your wisdom and hear your story and things like that and it just made me feel better. Um so yeah, I guess we'll wrap this interview up for now. Caesar, what is your YouTube channel again? I will. You mentioned you have a website. I mean, and if there's
Yeah.
any other social media links you'd like me to,
Yeah,
put
yeah,
in the
I'll send them all. I
description.
mean, I basically the only one that really is important is my website, which is, www.beyondthefrequency369.com. Once you go there, you'll find all my social media platforms, my YouTube channel. I primarily podcast. My main two that I really enjoy is Spotify for the audio listeners and YouTube for the visual stuff because I have a lot of visual stuff on mine. So yeah, go to the website. Please, if you guys like any of the content, if it resonates with you, hit me with those 5 stars. I mean, that helps a lot. For the conversation, help support small podcasters. And I also want to plug in my friend because I do owe him one. His name's Brad Lale. He has the Awaken podcast. Also on Spotify, he talks a lot about like some really cool stuff regarding spirituality and conspiracies and science and energy work and all that good angels, all that good stuff. So check him out too.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Caesar. This was an amazing podcast, and maybe we'll reconnect again sometime in the
Yeah,
future. So
absolutely, buddy. Appreciate you, man. Thank you.